Amsterdam. Um, there's so much to say. See if this resonates with you. When you travel to other destinations around the world, I find that a lot of the time you find yourself connected to the people. Amsterdam is not one of those places for me, but I have a stronger connection here than maybe to any other place in the world. And the distinction here is I feel connected to the city, not the people, where so many other places around the world, it's the complete opposite. I don't know if that makes sense, but there is a distinction that I'm trying to wrap my head around. But when I think of a place like Spain, I think of the people dancing. When I think of a place like Bali, I think of, the people, their smiles, how like warm and welcoming they are. When I think of a place like Budapest in Hungary, I think of this like heaviness, grit that I don't know, the community rallies around. It's just like an interesting feel. It's connection with the people. But here in Amsterdam, when I think of Amsterdam, I don't think of the people. I think of the city. And in so many ways, I'd gotten this for Sarah about a year ago, and that that is what I think of when I think of Amsterdam. I never have my mind go towards thinking of the people. It's a connection with the city, and that's not to say that the people aren't here and don't exist, and that you don't have thoughts and relationships with them. You do, but something about the city itself is just different. So this is obviously one of those unfiltered conversations. I'm just gonna kind of break down my experiences in Amsterdam and how I've come to think about this place and the relationship that I have with it and the people who are here. So for backstory, I am now in my like 5th month in Amsterdam. Since starting this like world journey of moving to a new country every month, we have come back to Amsterdam multiple times. But it's just captivating. And I guess I'll start at the beginning. The first time that we came here, we hated it. Sarah and I both were like, what is the hype around this place? We had huge expectations, but the first like 48 hours here, we were like, we do not get this. This is not us. And I think there are a lot of people who end up feeling like this. I was on the train doing some travel through other parts of the Netherlands, and we were stopping near the airport, and I overheard this couple talking about their Amsterdam experience. They were just leaving, and both of them said, yeah, this isn't a place that we're ever going to come back. And I totally get that because I was there. But I also think that is so wrong. Not saying you can't have that opinion, but I think a lot of people fall into a trap the first time they come into Amsterdam. The city is laid out in a way where it's very easy as a tourist to get wrapped up in this tiny little bubble that you think is the city, and it is very much not. You quickly realize, oh, this is the little area of town for the tourists, and everything else is completely different. So again, first 2 days, really hated it. Ever since, this has become our favorite place on planet Earth. There's a reason that we're here for a 5th month. This is a place that we really could see ourselves living. So I want to talk about some of the pros, some of the cons, some of just the things that I've noticed and observed over the time spending as much time as we have in Amsterdam. This is a stroll city, and I think part of why Sarah and I really have an attachment to the city is the city is built around some of the things that we really value, walking being one of those, biking being one of those. We hate sitting in cars. Living in the US for most of our lives, like obviously a car is just a part of your day-to-day life in the US and in most places around the world, right? But in Amsterdam, it is very much not. I mean, it's like the bikers have first right away, then it's the pedestrians walking, then it's cars. I mean, it'd kind of be a nightmare to try to drive in the city, and that really adds to the ambiance, the culture, the feel of the city. It is quiet. It feels like a place that you are meant to just walk around and stroll. And again, coming back to this picture right here, that is what I think about, because so many of our days here are spent wandering and looking at at things like this, because the beauty is unlike anywhere that we've seen. It's not, obviously so much of the beauty is man-made, right? You're not looking at gorgeous beaches or huge mountains or anything like that. Like, it is manufactured, but in a way that is just unique and just like, it's so hard to explain. It's peaceful. And it's just a wonderful city to wander through and stroll. And it's very different than a big city like a Paris or London that feels like it's this sprawling city with all of these different areas and huge energy. There is energy here. But they do have those pockets, but it feels like a town more than a city. And because of the biking culture and just like the infrastructure, it's so easy to get like anywhere in town within 10, 15, 20 minutes max on the bike. And if you are coming to Amsterdam, highly recommend, like, you got to get a bike. Your experience changes drastically the second that you get on the bike. And I know for a lot of people that's scary because, like, if you've never been here, if you've never been like amongst this many bikers at once, it is a scary thing at first, but it really does change the feel in a positive way. But this is one of those stroll cities. I'll talk about some of the things that I think some people don't necessarily love. A lot of people you hear cite the weather. They're like, oh man, the weather in the Netherlands is just terrible. And I mean, sure, I get that. We spent a lot of time in the summer here, intentionally. We've also spent some months in the winter. And the days are on the extreme ends. You're so far north that in the winter, days are really short. You're not getting as much sunlight as you would in a lot of other places around the world. And in the summer, like it is right now, it's complete opposite. Sun doesn't set till like after 10, but even when it sets, it's not, oh, it's set and now it's dark. It's like you get what I call like the blue hour, where there's still daylight. It's still really easy to be outside. You never feel like it's truly night until probably close to midnight, which is just really interesting, again, because it's not something that a lot of people have experiences with, because you have to be this far north. So the weather definitely is more moderate. Right now, it's like the heat wave of the summer. In Fahrenheit, it's like 80 something degrees today, but last week, everybody here in jackets, in scarves, and hats, and it's like mid-June. And that's how people are interacting with the weather, because you just never know what you're going to get. So I get that. Another thing that I think some people don't necessarily love about Amsterdam is the food. Like I said, it feels more like a town than a big city, so I think a lot of people struggle finding good food in the city. Dutch food in general tends to be a bit, I'm going to say, adverse to spice. And when I mean spice, like the spicy kind of spice, where a lot of people would like to find flavor. But this is such a city that has so much great international cuisine, that if you know where to look, this is one of the best cities in the world to eat in. I will say another con is this place is expensive. From the food, from the coffee, from accommodations. Like, this is not a cheap place to be. The more I'm thinking about it, I really do. I think the main cons that people see with this city is expensive, because it is. The weather, because that can be a challenge, for folks. And then people just not understanding how to interact with this city. But I want to shift gears and talk about some of the cultural things that I've found interesting. If you've never interacted with folks from the Netherlands, the Dutch, I really enjoy my interactions with the Dutch people. It's very straightforward conversations, right? There's no beating around the bush. In the Dutch culture, things are very direct, and I think a lot of people, especially Americans, sometimes can view that as like, oh, this is maybe like not great service. People are a little bit rude. I get why you would think that. It's not that the people are necessarily trying to be that way. In fact, I think you'll find a very... Waiting for the siren to go by. It stopped. Okay. The people, I find, are very well educated, very willing to have those deeper conversations. Because they're so direct, it sometimes is easy to get their authentic perspective because they're not afraid of offending anybody. They'll say it how it is, and that can definitely be refreshing. But again, I think that catches a lot of folks off guard. I've really enjoyed those conversations with the locals, and I appreciate that sense of the culture, but I do recognize that for a lot of people that is a drawback. But I think there are a lot of other things that are just interesting culturally. One is their approach and just view on like debt and credit cards. That was a shock. Coming from America, obviously, like America loves to shove credit cards down, the people's throats, right? Like there are great ways to make a lot of money using credit cards if you can use it responsibly. Obviously, a lot of people are not. I'm not condoning credit card usage. I obviously do use some credit cards. Point being here is in the Netherlands, people are very, very averse to debt. So much so that a lot of places in town, particularly the grocery stores, don't even accept credit cards. Like you have to have debit or this like Maestro card, a local version. So there are little tiny cultural things like that, which is like, man, why am I not able to use my card like normal here? And that's not something you should be worried about as a tourist. I've never been anywhere where the tourists hang out in Amsterdam and had that be a problem. It's when you are spending the longer periods of time here and trying to live like a local, it's at those local spots where you start finding that. And I found that to be a very interesting part of the culture to interact with and navigate. And it's just interesting hearing their perspective on why they're averse to debt, what the perspective is there. So that's all very interesting. I think another thing that is interesting is the culture around coffee shops. And when I mean coffee shops, I don't mean coffee. I mean the other substance that is legal here in Amsterdam. And it's why a lot of people, from the UK and other places come here. And I think Amsterdam kind of gets this rap for being like, oh, this is a place with, a lot of substances that I can use if I want. There's the red light district. And yes, those things do exist. But you don't see locals interacting with those things on a daily basis. That really is just a small portion of the tourism, and I think it's one of the things that turns off a lot of tourists. But I will say the open-mindedness of the culture, of the people, really provides an interesting feel and structure to the city, because obviously there's a lot of beer consumed here, a lot of alcohol that is had, but there are other substances that are utilized as well, and it's really interesting being in a place where there is a culture of both. They clash, but not in a way that are like there's not a lot of friction between the drinking culture and the other substance cultures. There is space for both. There is an openness and understanding and respect of, hey, you do you, so long as everybody can be adults about it. And that's a very interesting thing that you don't get to see that in a lot of other places around the world. So I found that to be interesting. And one of the coolest cultural things, I wrote about this in the newsletter, which if you're not on my newsletter and you want to be, I give like a weekly travel tip and an update from where I'm at every week. So a link will be down below if you want to sign up for that. But I wrote about how it's particularly fun being in town this time of year, because as school wraps up, there's this local tradition where as a kid is graduating, like the equivalent of like high school, in the US, the parents, as a form of like celebration of, great, my kid, graduated, high school, they're, moving on to a new phase of life. They take their backpacks and they hang them outside on the flagpoles. So you walk the streets and you just see backpack after backpack hanging on these just beautiful old historic homes. And it's just, Sarah always laughs and says, damn, like, why couldn't I have, been born here? That's such a cool thing that must be so fun for the teenagers and the families, just to celebrate education in that way. And that is very clear that education is very much prioritized in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam specifically. When people are looking, for things to do in the Netherlands, oftentimes it's museums, it's going to, art galleries, it's finding ways to connect with nature and connect with absorbing new information in some way is at least been my experience with it, which is a really, really beautiful thing. And then another thing that I find to just be very true, more so than other places, I'm not saying they have like world-class transit system in the sense that they're not doing anything different necessarily than other places, but everything here just seems to work. Everything seems to function, whether it be the trains, the trams, the bike lanes. Like, you would think that it's just chaos, but it's not. Like, there's just a flow to everything, and there's just a very comfortable experience being here. Everything feels comfortable for me in my experience. One of the examples with the public transportation that is just simple is you don't need to buy your ticket on the tram. You don't need to know exactly where you're going. You just take your phone and you do tap to pay, or hold your credit card up to the thing, and then you do it on the way out again, and it tracks it for you, knows exactly which stop you got on and off, and charges your card accordingly. It's things like that where you're like, wow, I have to do so much less thinking about those mundane things that I think stress a lot of people out. Which when you're here, your mindset just shifts to kind of this, I don't know, I call it peaceful, the this. it shifts to that. And as you could probably tell, I am still trying to figure out this city, but what I do know is that it is special. What I do know is that if you are coming here and you manage to break out of that little tourist bubble, this is just one of the most rewarding and peaceful cities to explore, compared to any other place that I've been in the world. And there's so much interesting stuff here, but I recognize that that's not necessarily the experience for everybody. But for Sarah and I, this is one of those places. This is up there. So I'm curious for you, for anybody who's been to Amsterdam, or for people who haven't been to Amsterdam, what are your perceptions of this place? If you have spent some time here, what did you think? Did you manage to have, good weather? Is it a place that you would come back? Or like that couple that I was overhearing on the train, is this a place that you never plan to come back to again? Because I think there's probably a range of opinion around this. So would love to hear your thoughts on kind of what I have accurate and what I don't have for accurate from my perspective. And if you're a local, would really love to hear how you view things. I am gonna have a full tips video on all the ways for first timers to avoid those tourist traps, and kind of my recommendations around the city. So be on the lookout for that in the next few weeks. But would love to engage in the comment section. You guys do a really great job being respectful of one another, and providing some really valuable information. So looking forward to those conversations in the comment section. Leave any questions if you got them, and we'll catch you guys next time.